I would like to introduce our next lead speaker, Mr. Suhas Chakma. He is a very well-known human rights activist, and he's the Director of Rights and Risk Analysis in New Delhi. And I know that he has been working for a very long time on the rights of various smaller minority groups, and very concerned about this rights. So I request him to put forward his views before you. Mr. Chakma. Mr. Chakma, in about 20 minutes?
Yes, ma'am.
So that we have time for some
Yes, ma'am.
views.
I kept it here. Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to thank the All India Federation of Diploma Engineers for inviting me here. Ramda, President, General Secretary, and others. I think education is a very dull subject, but when it becomes controversial, then there is something wrong with it. And we live in India through trying circumstances. We often read about attempt to rewrite history, where education becomes the central focus of the debate in the country. But we always forget the fact that this dull subject, this particular department of education, has been under tremendous onslaught for the last 25 years. When the NDA government came to power, we had a human resources minister who was not too keen to listen to others, very dogmatic. Then it came to Manmohan Singh Ji's time. We had a lawyer who was the education minister, who almost turned India into a Scandinavian country, where children did not have to give exams, including the benches they were promoted. It became such a nightmare for the schools, parents, basically to indicate that what is something good for others need not be good for us, especially in a country where we have about 1.43 billion population at this point of time. Then, of course, under the current government, we also had ministers who did not have necessary academic credentials to head the education ministry. So you could see that the Ministry of Education, among all other ministries under the government of India, have been under attacks. And everybody wanted to leave a legacy. Only ministers wanted to leave a legacy, and unfortunately none of them have been able to leave any legacy. And we should see the national education policy from that perspective. And when I read about it, but before coming here, I thought I should read the national education policy myself minutely. It was about 66 pages, including the cover pages. And I had doubts in myself whether 66-page document could be a policy direction. Obviously, at the outset, I will say, we did not understand what is a policy and what is a program. It's almost like a programmatic directions. And of course, we had the 1986 education policy. It required changes, given the changes which have taken place in the last so many years. But what has changed in India from 1986 to now with respect to education? Only one thing has changed, that right to education has become a fundamental right under the Constitution of India. Then I went through the 66 pages. I converted it into Microsoft Word. I searched it. I could not find a single reference to right to education in the document. And if we do not mention right to education, which is a fundamental right in the education policy, it fails there itself. We are not talking about rights. So when I look at this document, it talks about fundamental duties. given under Article 51A of the Constitution. It makes no reference to the fundamental rights of the Constitution, which cannot be touched by any rules. So that's why I think when I looked at it, I found it a little bit problematic that we are not talking about rights. Because if we talk about education, we cannot talk about education without having the lenses of human rights. So how does the international community or the United Nations looks at right to education? I think when the UN Committee on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights drafted its general comment on right to education, what should be right to education, it referred to 4 A's. That's basically availability, accessibility, affordability, and adaptability. Now, in terms of availability, of course, we have to ensure whether the educational facilities are also available, including drinking water, including separate toilets for both sexes. And we know that in many schools, or possibly most of the schools in the rural areas, it doesn't exist. It must be so difficult for our girl child, to not even have access to proper toilets. So availability, whether the building or other infrastructure, is a critical issue. The second issue which the UN Committee on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights talks about is accessibility. Accessibility is a very critical issue because some schools are not accessible to many people. Because if you are a Dalit, if you are a tribal, if you belong to particular religious minority groups, it is not accessible. So accessibility and discrimination has to be an integral part. But if you look at it, accessibility is not even an issue. We recognize in the new education policy itself that there are certain particular social groups cannot access, but we do not discuss this non-discrimination aspect of the accessibility. The second aspect of the accessibility is the physical accessibility. Physical accessibility, it is not only meant for the children who are, as in the document called Dibyang, no. It's also the physical accessibility. In my areas, you could hear when I shout from this rooftop of the hill and the other side. But if I walk down, it takes me at least 3 hours to reach there. So when we talk about physical accessibility, it's children who have special abilities as well as real physical accessibilities. If you read reports in the newspapers, so many schools are being closed down because there are no children. Have we discussed why are they leaving these schools? That's the issue of the physical accessibility. And the third issue in the accessibility issue is the economic accessibility. So many private schools are coming up. People have forgotten the government schools. And they do not send their children to government schools. So economic accessibility has become an issue which the government doesn't talk about. Now the third issue, which among these 4 is the acceptability. How do we teach children? Is it culturally appropriate? Is it relevant? I think in most schools in India, because the society had not reached that stage, people would still be hesitant to teach about sex education. So what is acceptable form of imparting education is something very critical. So that is something we have to look at. And the last point in this 4 A's is the adaptability. A syllabus has to change. And in fact, 10 days back I was reading a newspaper where the IIT Mumbai had taken a decision that artificial intelligence has to be one of the core courses across the spectrum. So that's the adaptability. Nobody had thought that we would be studying computer science when we were studying science, but today we are talking about computer science. So adaptability is one of the critical issues. So when we look at these 4 A's and look at the policy of the national education policy on 3 educations, which is basically the primary education, school education, and the higher education. If you look at the NEP, it says that as per the NSS survey in 2017 and 18, 3.22 crores children had dropped out. They do not have universal access to education. So now the question is, without addressing these 4 areas which I have mentioned, accessibility, affordability, availability, adaptability, can we bring back these children? Obviously not, we cannot bring back. And if we look at that NEP policy, unfortunately, it fails. It is all over the places on values, culture, except how we should get educated. Now, secondary education. I just want to mention one particular thing. In the secondary education, I think the problem which we are facing in the country is the CBSEization of the education. The state educational boards have to conform to the requirements of the CBSE. So that's what I'm saying, CBSEization of the higher school education. Because you have made everything into one. You want to get into engineering, it's NET. You want to get into medical, it's NEET. The question is, children in most of the state educational boards do not have access to education the way CBSE teaches. CBSE is available only elite class of this country. But you look at it, whether it's in Bihar, whether it's in Tripura, whether it's in Tamil Nadu or anywhere else, I think the boards, school education boards are not adapting to that. And the last issue on the higher education, I will say, the higher education is about autonomy and academic freedom. You read the entire document, you talk about higher educational institutions, you want to make India the Vishwaguru of the world, but there is no reference to autonomy and academic freedom. So last couple of points which I want to talk about is what should be an education policy. The education policy, I think, should have policy directions so that there is a difference between programmatic approaches and policy directions. If you read this education policy, it is almost like a program, but the program for education of so many layers and so many types of education, you cannot actually make it. So that's why what you need is some basic framework of policy direction. This is the way it is. But they ended up making a programmatic document which is 66 pages. It is still not inclusive enough. So when I talk about curriculum, as I said, why policy directions? Policy directions should be that when you teach children of this country, they should know diversity of this country. And it is very important for me because in this country we know everything except the smaller groups. So let us look at history. It's a country where we have not, except religious texts, mythologies, have written much about history. You look at the Adivasis. You can read about the Adivasis, not in Ramayana, but in Mahabharata, in the history of Ekalabya. Tell me from Ekalabya till the British came, which text mentions the Adivasis? Which text mentions this? And who has written the history of this country? Apart from Akbarnama and etc., rulers praising themselves. Look at any historic or the travelers who have passed through this country, whether it's Yuan Sang, Fahian, Ibn Battuta, anybody else. They passed through the mainstream society, and Adivasis always, retreated themselves. So we have reached a point till the British came and established their empire here. You actually do not have anything written about the history of the Adivasis. So the policy should be, if you want to integrate, which is one of the key focus, you also include them. You also include them. So you do not include them, not only at the national level, at the state level. So what we have ended up is basically learning more and more about the majority communities and less about the minority communities. When we studied in Tripura, I knew how the houses were built in Rajasthan. But people or students in